Hey guys, I'm Follygon, and today we're just going to be doing a little bit of a chill live stream. It looks like everything's working. Looks like my audio is good. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. We're not doing anything crazy today. Nothing that we're looking to complete in like an hour or two's time. So yeah, like I said, just kind of a chill live stream. People can pop in and ask questions if they want, or just say hello. And while that's going on, I'm just gonna keep working on this new character that I got here. This is just my my most recent personal project that I'm working on. A little bit of a samurai bear, I guess you could say. You can probably tell, at least by looking at him. He's a work in progress. Right now I'm kind of playing around with the armor, trying to figure out where to go next with all that. But before I do that, alright, so stream health is good. And Craig has just joined us. Sorry you couldn't stay to the end of the last stream. No worries, no problem at all. So stream health good, everything's good. Everything is golden. Let me grab some references. I just have some pictures of some samurai armor and some other stuff up over here that I'm kind of glancing at and taking some ganders. That's what we say in Cincinnati. So armor, yeah. Let's do some armor. I just kind of opened this up and I haven't looked at this in a day or two, so it's been a minute. But we can figure out where to go from here. I think I was kind of playing around with the chest here last time I was looking at this, and if you look at it, you can see that these are all just created with the Z modeler brush. So these are all kind of hard surface modeled here and then creased, different edges and that sort of thing. So it's nothing too special, but that's kind of what I'm looking for right now. So these kind of basic forms. Other than that, let's see here. Let me turn on auto collapse, and I'll show you the hammer that I made for this guy. Boop. Wait, I did that wrong. There we go. So yeah, here's like a little bit of a demon hammer, also Z modeled, hard surface modeled here in ZBrush, that I made a few days ago for this guy. Got some cool kanji on the side. One saying bear, the other one saying something else that I'll talk about later for the character. But yeah, it's just a big hammer. So he's got like this samurai armor. I'm not sure like how. He's not, I guess, in particular a samurai, just because of the fact that, you know, he's using a hammer instead of a sword. But, let's see if I can turn that off. There we go. This auto collapse feature, by the way, is super awesome. Lets you, essentially create folders here. But, it's really cool. I love it. Love that new feature in 4R8 P2. So yeah, moving forward, playing with the armor some more, playing with a lot of stuff here. Some stuff is not quite apparent what it's supposed to be, but that's the point of working on something. Move forward. What do you think about what happened in Texas? Did something happen in Texas recently? And did something happen in Texas today? Where I am, it is bright and early in the morning, so I have not checked any news outlets, nor do I normally. I get most of my news from the internet. But yeah, let's check this out. So moving forward with some armor, I was working on some side paneling here last time I was playing around. Just play around with some masking, moving some stuff around. So I'm just trying to get some really clean shapes as I do this. I'm trying to be careful. There's some weird stuff going on here with the geometry, and that's just because of the way I made it. I made this piece a lot longer, and then I tried to Q-mesh some parts out, and the geometry wasn't really cooperating, so I had to just kind of select and delete hidden, and it probably wasn't the best option looking at that crappy geometry now. So Craig says 26 people died inside of a church in Texas. Wow. Shot dead inside of a church in Texas. Wow, that's absolutely insane. Yeah, I mean, that's a travesty. That's crazy. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. At least not right now. HUD Boy says, hey, I can't hang around, but figured I'd drop in quickly to say hi before I get busy at work. Well, hello, Hudaman, ex-Hudaman. Glad to see you. Glad to see that you could actually make a stream every once in a while. It's very rare that you get to drop in, but we always appreciate when you do. But yeah, that's crazy about the Texas shooting. That's an absolute travesty. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm not gonna take some time to like look that up and talk about that right now because that's not my intention. But Katie says hi, or hey, I guess. Hey Katie, welcome to the stream. We're working on some grizzly bear armor. Good times here in Bearland. So I'm looking at some references for some samurai armor over here on the side. Last thing I said I was doing was some side paneling and some starting to add some more visual interest and details to this. Excuse me. So I think next up on my list is to take a look at some shoulder pads over here, which I just have obvious kind of cubes in place for, as well as the padding that is going to cover our bear's legs here. And I probably need to do some posing. He's got his cute little fluffy tail out here as well. Alright, so looking at these shoulder pads, they have a bit of kind of this layering effect that I have here as well. So I need to think about how I can incorporate that. I'm thinking what I'm going to do now, just kind of like looking at my reference. Let me pull it over for you guys so you can see. I'm referencing some kind of old samurai armor. So they kind of have these layered padding pieces. So I think I'm just going to take one of those and then kind of duplicate it and move that up the chain there. So let's play around with that. So onto the shoulders. My internet here is so bad I can't stay up on the live feed, so I'm going to drop out of here. No worries, no worries. We'll see you next time. Glad you could even stop by for a little bit, so no worries at all. We'll see you next time. Alright, so shoulder pad it up. So I'm just going to delete that, like I said. Have a little bit of this cubed armor slat. I'd like to add some curve to this, so let's insert a poly loop here. I'm just using the Z modeler brush. Insert a poly loop on the face. One way that you can get some like even poly loops distributed, so let's say you want, what would this be? A quarter of the way across. So you could do what I just did. Create a middle one and then bisect it again, and then you could delete edge loop, delete that middle one, and now you have those perfectly at those quarter positions. So you have a fourth cube, a 2/4 cube, and another fourth cube over here. That's one way. Another way is to go back to this piece and then just bevel it and bring that out as far as you can, and it should take it to the halfway point. But for now, let's just, I'll keep that middle loop in there just so I kind of have that for reference. Let's mask this off. Kind of want to wrap this around a little bit. What I might do, oh actually, you know what, I shouldn't have to. Show you guys. If you're not familiar, you can activate symmetry, and I think this would be Z symmetry off the top of my head, just how this is oriented. Turn on local sim. Oh, there, I think we got it. So now, as you can see, I have symmetry on this piece, and it's working on the local axis. And I want my transpose tool, please. We like that. And now I can make changes to this. Hopefully, that was a little, okay, we got some weird stuff going on the opposite side. That's why I typically try to work on the left side of things for this. Let's delete that guy over there. He's garbage. We can replicate that back across with a mirroring weld, so no worries there. So let's move this into position, try and figure out how much we want this to wrap around. We can also add some creasing in here. Feel a sneeze coming on. Oh, I hate that feeling. Alright. And we'll take that middle edge. I'm going to keep dynamic on right now just so I can see what it would look like if it's subdivided. Move that out. Trying to get a nice clean sweep through here. Pull that in. Let's try to rotate a little bit from that middle point. And I think I want to maybe lessen the steepness of this angle. Just kind of looking at some references. So let's do that. So move that in, kind of slide it, mask off the rest, slide it again. Even take our transpose tool on move and give that a little rotation there. You might have to correct some of the stretching that you get from that. If you're anal like I am and you're like, ah, it has to be this perfect clean shape, then that's what you want to do there. So I just masked off those inside points and then scooted them up a little bit. Boop, boop. All right. So we got that bleeding into the flesh of our bear. We don't want that. So try to reposition it a little bit better. And I need to think about, while I'm doing all this, a thing that I need to kind of keep in mind is how all this armor and all this junk is going to be connected to each other. So this is going to be a belt later on. It kind of looks like it's connected to that. I don't want that. So here I have some simple loops that are going to be rope that I'm going to add some knots to, tie it through the armor. So this front plate and back plate are held on by these ropes going over the shoulder. These ropes that are connected are attached to these shoulder pieces, and then these shoulder pieces here will connect to with again more rope or whatever, twine, whatever you want to call it. It looks more like rope to me here, but that's going to be connected to these pieces that cover the upper arm. And then he's supposed to be like this strong, burly bear guy, right? So I don't want to, that paired with he has this giant hammer, I'm trying to think like, okay, I want to give him kind of like this cool Japanese style, like old school samurai armor, but at the same time, I want him to be able to like be mobile, be able to move. So I'm trying to think about that in terms of his design as well. So he's got this giant hammer. He needs to be able to like, whoops, he needs to be able to like hoist it over his head and like slam this hammer down, right? And if he's got a ton of stuff on his arms or his shoulders, it's going to make it hard for him to be too mobile with that. So that's some stuff that I need to kind of keep in mind as I'm working. So some of the stuff that I kind of think about while I'm going, everything kind of needs to have a purpose. So it starts out with an idea. Oh, I have this anthropomorphic bear character. I want him to be wearing this cool old school samurai armor. Yeah, awesome, that's a cool idea. But the weapon that he's using could conflict with that, you know, in terms of just like actual design, right? The hammer isn't the normal weapon of a samurai. So I have some backstory and some ideas about this character that I've personally thought about to try to make sense of all this stuff. So everything that you create in your design, whether it's for a character or a rock or a building, it has to be able to answer the question of why is it that way. And I think that's one of the most important things about design in general, and it's often one of the glanced over things for a lot of people in those early stages. So why is it this way? I'd like to thin this piece out without messing up everything else. So let's try that. All right. Now the point of this is to create one and then duplicate it up as a chain piece. I have it overlapping the wrong way though, so bottom will be on top like so, and then kind of replicate up the arm, and then I'll probably have to make some scale changes there as well. So I think maybe one way to alleviate some of that is to bring this in on the edge. And try to make that a little bit more uniform. And I'm just using a really big move brush right now and trying to play with just tugging that around. And because I have so few polygons here, it makes it really easy to keep that clean shape. And I'm not even working with subdivisions. It might kind of look like it here if you're not familiar with this, but it's just dynamic subdivisions that I'm turning on and off with a hotkey that let me see what that would look like. Not only that, but you can come in here and let's see here. You can mess with a lot of this info in here to get some cool different results. We can say like, oh, we want a certain amount of flat subdivs before we do some smoothing, or we can do more smooth to see what that would look like. I think that's pretty cool, but I'm just keeping it on kind of a lower level for now, so it's not slowing down my workflow or my computer, which is an important one. So let's adjust some of this a little bit more. And again, like I said, I like to be a little bit anal with this stuff, keeping stuff as clean as I possibly can. So I need to start this guy at the top and then replicate it down the chain. But before I do that, I would like to put a little bit of a bevel around the side, or around the outside edge, kind of like what I did on this armor here. We can see that we have this bevel going around the outer edge, or I guess not bevel, but it's more of a trim, so a trimmed edge. So let's do the same thing up here, and I'll show you how I did that. I'm just going to duplicate that piece, grab a curved tube brush, and subdivide this guy a few times. Delete lower. And how do I want to do this? Because I'm not going to be able to mirror and weld this. So it might be easier to just do a standard bevel and then play with that. Lunalay says, hey, finally online. Just wanted to know. Let's see here. Just wanted to know how you would model hands for Toadette. I followed your stream when you created her, and I'm currently trying to create Toad. I have all of his body parts now except the hands, or just a fist, not a hand. Yeah, hands are tough. Essentially, what I did for my Toadette sculpt was basic palm shaped, and the basic palm shape. So you could think of the palm as, actually I have a video on my YouTube channel about sculpting hands. I would go check that out. I also have a free 3D model on my Gumroad account of a realistic hand if you want to download that and try to learn from that. Obviously Toad from Super Mario Bros. Doesn't have a realistic hand, right? But that might be a good way for you, plus watching that video, to kind of see my process. It's essentially just a block for the hand, a block for the fat pad of the thumb here and the muscles there, and then a very blocky finger block out. So you could say cube, cube, cube for each knuckle, and make that with the Z-Modeler brush, similarly to what I was just doing here with this geometry. And then what I would do from there is just duplicate the finger a few times, do it one more time for the thumb, remove a notch of the finger, and then start sculpting on top of that and getting higher res. It's not something that, you know, I can show you in 5 minutes, and it's not something that you can do in 5 minutes. Sculpting hands, even if they are hyper stylized like Toadette or Toad or whatever you're making, they can be tough. They can take some time, right? So that's not what we wanted. Made that flat on accident. So take your time with it. Be patient and play around, see what you can come up with. So what I'm going to do next, if I can select this, is start deleting some edge loops from this. But first, what just happened there? I am subdividing, and it appears to be not applying my smooth subdivisions for some reason. What did I do? That's very, very odd. Let's try doing a Dynamesh. Ah, there's a mask somewhere. Okay, there we go. Now when okay. That was odd. Fun times, fun times. Oh, okay, sorry. Let's turn on double so we can see geometry. We got some extra geometry hiding out for us. It's annoying. Delete that. You always model a hand with all fingers straight, right? Because it might be easier to rig it later on, or am I wrong? There is never an always case solution. Never always do something, especially if I tell you to always do it that one way. If I've said that in the past, just don't listen to me, I'm an idiot. Figure out what you're trying to accomplish. So I don't know if you're making this for 3D print, if you're thinking about rigging the character later on. What I would recommend, my personal recommendation, is to model your hand with each knuckle almost in a relaxed pose, having a slight bit of bend to each knuckle at each joint. And that should help you recognize where those joints are more easily, as well as be able to rig them maybe more easily later down the road. So let's Z-remesh this guy. And now we can attempt to clean up our trim. Now, if I would have done this on an actual symmetrical axis, I would be able to mirror this perfectly, but it looks like we're going to have some trouble doing that. So from this point forward, we might want to get that on a particular axes. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do a duplicate, a merge down, and hide everything except for this, and go down to deformation, unify, and transform. I still want to be on the Z, but now I'm on the actual Z axis. And if I come up here and go to mirror and weld Z, oh fuck, mirror and weld Z, boop, now we'll be actually perfectly along that axis. So split hidden, I have just these two pieces here, and now I can kind of work with this and align this as best as I can. My problem with learning ZBrush is I can't find clear enough images. I'm not sure what you're referencing there, if you're talking about finding clear references. That sounds more like a problem with just learning how to sculpt instead of learning ZBrush. Learning ZBrush, learning the actual software, it's not that hard. It just takes a lot of time, and it takes time to learn kind of the better way to do a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff in ZBrush that you don't really need to learn about. That's kind of, you know, older stuff that people don't use too often anymore, and there are better ways to do things now, in my opinion. But, you know, I learned a lot of those things back in the day when we didn't have the Z modeler brush, and we didn't have a lot of the stuff that we do now. So I think learning that stuff can be helpful, but that was kind of my intention with the How to ZBrush course, to get people up and running in ZBrush as quickly as possible. But at the same time, the software isn't going to sculpt for you, which is the hardest part of ZBrush, you know, the actual art portion. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, dude. Tough stuff. Don't make excuses. Find those clear enough images. Find those clear enough images. I believe in you. You can do it. You seem like a smart cookie. Alright, so now our trim is starting to look a little bit more clean, right? We can align it, I think, a little bit better. Got some warbles going on here. What I like to do is just delete more and more edge loops until we're looking nice and spick and span. So kind of simplifying that shape is my tactic there, to clean it up a little bit. It's also starting to look like it's kind of flattening out there, so I just kind of want to try to inflate that a little bit. Same with the top. Looks thicker in some areas than others. Whoa. Fix this. And fix our orientation. This top corner is giving me some trouble, so let's look at this. I think we need another edge loop in here. So what I'm going to do is, if you remember that technique that I just showed you guys a little bit ago, bevel edge loop complete, and bevel that edge. It's one of the other ways that you can add additional edge loops. Whoops, wanted my move brush. And align that, clean it up. Let's look at this arc a little bit. So we have a lot more edge loops up top than we do on the bottom, so guess what? Let's delete some. Delete some. Whoops, we got that bevel still on. So delete edge loop complete. Delete, 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 delete. Come on. Okay, we'll keep that one in. I'll delete that one though. All right, that's looking pretty good. This is what I want for the top though. I want that 1, 2, 3. Oh, we kind of got that. It's just stretching there. Maybe I should keep that last poly loop in there. I think that helps tighten that corner up a little bit better. So yeah, box modeling is kind of boring in my opinion, and I'm sorry for those watching that are like, this is so stupid. But this is 3D modeling, right? It is kind of stupid. It is kind of boring. Everybody, you know, me and my friend were kind of just talking about like art fundamentals recently on a little bit of a project that we're working on. And I'll talk more about that in the future, hopefully, depending on where it goes. But everybody talks about these art fundamentals, but they always forget to mention one of the most important ones, and one of the most important fundamentals, which is time. How much time you have to spend on art in general and on just your skills. And I think that's something that a lot of teachers overlook, a lot of artists kind of overlook, and at the end of the day, that's like one of the most important factors in your artistic ability, time spent. I always say that people often see, you know, the time you put, or I'm sorry, people often see the end result, but they don't see the time that went into something. And I think that's I think that's a bad thing, in my opinion, just because so many people online that are aspiring artists, you go on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, and you're seeing everybody's best work. Everybody puts their best foot forward, which I think they should, but I think it's a problem more so with perception than with how people try to portray themselves online. And I think people just kind of need to understand that, yes, this is an amazing thing, and this whole discussion kind of came about by, we were talking about the somebody asked me the question, like, how long did that take you to make? It's like, that's not really a good question, because it's not that this piece took me 10 hours or 50 hours. It's more so that this piece took me 10 hours or 50 hours, and I have 20,000 hours of sculpture experience. So there's that. So that's like, how do you can't like justify it. Like, how long did that take? I think that's a bad question. I think the right solution there is to just kind of have the perspective of, you know, how much time not only went into a thing, but how much time went into developing all the skills around that. Which is, I mean, it's tough. It's, you know, it's tough for everybody to always keep that in mind, but I think it's important. All right. So now we have our trim all nice and nifty, all nice and clean. I might make that a little bit more thin, but we can mess with that. Let's see here. Quasar. Sorry, there's some caps and stuff going in there. That's probably still wrong because I don't think that's how you spell quasar, but Control D. How do you divide that mesh without losing form? Control D. What I'm doing in this case is not Control D, but just D, the D key plus Shift D, which activates again that dynamic subdiv down here. I was showing that off a little bit ago. So that's how I'm doing that, if you're curious about that. Thank you, thank you. I know I can do it, it's just the reference I'm looking for. Like I want to clear hand fingers askew, easy, definable from all directions. Well, here is my advice for you. When I sculpted my hand, when I was like trying to do a realistic hand sculpt, I went into my kitchen, which has like these bay door windows that let light in really well. I turned on all the lights, and I took my hand, I took my phone, took pictures of my hand. People, I think people forget that they have like a reference of their own body. I don't know if maybe your hands are very, very ugly, but I have very beautiful hands, so I was able to get some good reference photos. And then I just took those four orthographic images, and I just kind of tried to put my hand. I think I actually did it upside down so I could get like a relaxed hand position. And then I put those images into Photoshop and just made a single image, and then referenced that. I referenced my own hand. So just don't forget that you got your own body. You don't have to look online for reference images all the time. If you can reference yourself, heck yeah, do it. So what do we? Why is our local sim being dumb? This is a. Okay, so here's a problem in ZBrush. Local symmetry can be a little weird sometimes, so when you turn on local sim, I would recommend just turning on solo mode, mousing over your geometry a couple times, and then turning solo mode back off, and it looks like that does a pretty good job of realigning everything for your local symmetry if you're using that option. But just keep that in mind if you're having some trouble with that. I find that to be. So solo mode down here, I have it set to the hotkey of G, which honestly is the greatest change that I've, out of all the stuff in my UI, that's like my favorite thing. It should, in my opinion, it should be default in ZBrush. It's so useful. Okay, so we are back to figuring out how we're going to cascade these down the arm. So what I'm doing, you can use your transpose tool, you can use your 3D gizmo, it doesn't matter, but I'm just going to move the piece while holding control, and that'll duplicate the piece. And then I can move it, I can rotate it, I can do all sorts of things to it. But I need, what do I need here? I need to make this piece even more thin, just so that the geometry isn't going to collide in a strange way. Make sure that my sim is on. And there we go. All right. And thin out this piece. Careful trying to mask stuff if you have dynamic subdivisions on. So what you can see here is that it looks like the geometry is taking this curve to it, but in all actuality, this is the true geometry right here. So even though I dynamically smooth it, if I mouse over this with my pen, you can see that red dot. That's actually where that vertex is. So even though it looks like it's there, it's actually there. So if you're trying to mask stuff off and you're like, why isn't it Why isn't it working? Just check to make sure that your stuff is aligned correctly. I think I might delete that middle edge loop as well here in a minute. Let's take a look here. So let's do that. Well, I kind of like that curve. I might like to exaggerate that a little bit more. What the heck, man? Come on, pull out. Get a little bit of a roundness to that. I kind of like that. Let's try to carry that through the rest of this shape. So a little bit of a bubbled out here. And again, I just kind of want to emphasize, like, I know a lot of this can be very boring, but this is it. This is the good stuff. This is the glory that is digital sculpting. So for all those that are like, I want to be a character artist, be prepared to become a poly pusher. Auto groups. Flip some masks and keep working here. So I'm just trying to get this nice and as clean as possible, especially because I'm going to be duplicating this, and after I duplicate it, there's no easy way to edit all of them. The only way I could do that is if I used array mesh, and with array mesh I'm not going to have as much control over positioning for these. So I think that looks a lot better, a lot more clean. We can kind of figure out how we want that positioned here. And now we can kind of layer that on the body, or down the arm here. Sandro forgot to say hello. We'll never forget to say hello, Sandro. Thanks for stopping in. Let's see here. My own body. I never would have thought. I want to beta test your game. Ah, yes. Or alpha test. I don't know which is correct. Yeah, I'm working on the side a little bit of a card game. It's just a thing that I kind of made that I want to play with some friends. Right now it's just in Tabletop Simulator, if you guys are familiar with that. But I was doing some play testing yesterday with a big group of people, and I think the next step is to make some minor changes, and then prototype a physical copy. And then once I have a physical copy, to take that and try to play it with some physical people instead of some digital people. So that's what's going on there. But yes, Brendan, be cool. You should get Tabletop Simulator. Playtest it. Tabletop Sim's awesome if you guys are familiar with it. Or aren't familiar with it, sorry. I'm trying to figure out... Maybe the roundness is going to add more problems than what I desire. Or maybe this can just be like a deltoid covering. That might actually work pretty well and be more in line with what I was thinking for mobility. I kind of like that. I kind of like that idea. Let's step back up. Let's try to delt it up. So worry more about just covering this deltoid. And again, I'm just pressing D and Shift D, stepping out of those dynamic subdivs. And I think these need to be just barely kind of touching here. Might have to change the like upper shape to kind of like taper it down towards the bottom, just by looking at this from the side view, just to kind of get that slotted in look. But let's keep playing with them this way. So I figured this would need to happen, that I need to kind of place a few and then go back through and make some changes to the original. But yes, I do like that that look and that idea. I think just making some changes to tapering that in would make that look a lot better overall. So let's do it. Let's grab all these subdivs. Whoops. Go from perp to perp. Pull that in. So I'm just trying to move along that angle as best as I can. And you can see here that we're going to get some weird tugging on that trim piece that I made. And that's simply because it has more poly loops there. But that's not a big deal. We can adjust that. So let's come in here. I think, whoa, that's no good. Let's let's delete this poly loop. And come on, let's play nice. Let's insert a new poly loop here. ZBrush. Might get it. What's going on? Why won't you play nice? It looks like it's actually blending pretty well between those two edges, so I think I'm gonna leave that. So ZBrush was doing me a favor, actually. It was saying, you don't need it. It's fine, dude. Which is rare that ZBrush has your back. But in this case, in this one case. Researching into writing a book. That's sweet. That sounds like some fun. I love me some writing. My sister's a writer. Your mailbox, you ended up getting a new one. Someone ran into Brendan's mailbox and destroyed it. It's a good time. I see some inconsistencies in my trim, so I'd like to straighten that out. I might need to just, again, I do like that that bubbled out shape that we are getting there, but I think I want to kick it back just a little bit. So I'm just using my smooth brush very lightly to kind of push that in. So we still have that shape, but it's not quite as pronounced as it was previously. All right, cleaning up, thickening up some areas. Some of this stuff, it might seem like this curve here, it's like, oh, that's nothing. But to me, like that little stuff of those inconsistent shapes, maybe one or two here won't get noticed, but you start leaving all that stuff around everywhere, it starts to add up really quick, and then nothing looks clean. None of your shapes look good. People have asked me many times, how do you get your sculpts, how do you get your shapes to be so clean? It's like, well, a lot of it's being anal about how clean it is, and a lot of it's kind of just experience from working on toys, or toys mostly, just because you have to be so clean for that kind of stuff. But really just time, experience, practice. All right. I think we're in a lot better position now. Hey, that took a long time to make some shoulder pads that are pretty simple in actual shape, but, or deltoid pads, like shoulder pads, shoulder armor. But, whoops, that was not good. But, you know, I think it's worth it. Freaking local sim. Mirror and weld actually works with local symmetry. Okay, I did not know that. So that's actually very helpful to know. Learn something new every day. So now we have some nifty little deltoid pads in there. I might inflate those a little to give them a little bit more volume, but I did want to be very careful to make sure that if there was any geometry kind of going into itself, that it would be kind of minimalized. So I think we can work on connecting some of this. I'm not sure if I really like the shape that I've built here. It's kind of referencing some other sets of armor over here, and for people that are kind of just popping in, I'll show you guys some stuff here. So I'm kind of just referencing some different armor. I don't know why this keeps shrinking to that size. I was trying to like exaggerate this kind of shape here, and I think I pushed it a little too far. So I'm not really a huge fan of what we got going on there. I don't think it really fits the rest of the motif. I think thinning it out, not exaggerating it quite so much, and then giving it some trim will give us the answer. So I'm going to do that next, and then start making some connection pieces so that everything is kind of connected together. And then I think that this would probably be at the bottom, tied around his bicep, or like right under the armpit, so that it kind of stays taut on the bottom. So again, thinking about how everything is going to try to make a little bit more sense here. So I wanna just see what happens when I inflate this real quick. Let's try one, just to give it a little bit more thickness. Yeah, I think that's good. I think I just wanted to get that a little bit closer to this size here for this trim, but I think that's a lot better. So I had some creased edges there, so when I inflated it still held on to all those. So just a quick little inflate. Alright, so again, I want to knock this shape down. From here, it looks super exaggerated, right? But when I turn on that dynamic smooth, it gives it a nice clean curve. We can adjust that even more so. Trying to push that in just a wee bit, as well as let that quick save. Move this in. I'm gonna get a little bit of an angle here. Let it taper down. It's weird when you're working with your dynamic subdiv off, and then you turn it back on, and it's like, whoa, that looks completely different. So try to flip between those two quite often, just to help yourself out. All right. And I want to thin this out as well. So let's try and play with that. One way I might do that, other than this weird vert that we have freaking out here, is a lot of people don't know about this feature, but it's something used in anything that's going to be molded later down the road. If you come into, let's see, group front, so I think that's in polygroups, group front. So if you click group front, it's going to group any front facing polys, and because my camera was looking there, it'll do a pretty good job of anything that the camera is looking at. So let me maybe show you an example on a bit of a more high-res piece of geometry here. So group front, anything that's facing the camera will get polygrouped. So that piece down there at the bottom was just kind of tilted forward a little bit. So this is a good way to you know, just make selections in general, but for the most part, in the past I've used it with finding out what would create some problems in mold making. So that's what I've used it for. But again, it has a lot of utility purposes. So thinning this out, I was going to just, you know, group front, but because we got some weird shapes going on, we can just do a quick little mask around here. Knock these guys out. Craig, it looks like he's talking about his book that he's working on. A group of friends are recruited by the government who have discovered new possible habitable planets that they would like to colonize, and he and his friends develop cryopods that win them passage on the vessel. Ooh, some sci-fi. I'm more of a fantasy guy myself, but I like sci-fi as well. Has anybody... I'm currently reading the third book in the Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown. If anybody here is not familiar, I'm a bit of a book boy myself, so if anybody here is not familiar with Pierce Brown, I'd highly recommend that you check out his work. Maybe look up some Goodreads reviews. Red Rising is kind of like super popular right now, or at least in the past couple years it has been. But I would recommend it. Red Rising has been very, very good. And I think I'm going to do the same strategy. So just a little bit of smooth to kind of clean up some of these verts. So it helps center that. And I can just kind of push it in. So a little bit more thin. Still a little bit of an inconsistent shape. It's still a bit of an inconsistent shape. But I don't know if that's a bad thing, that it's completely asymmetrical. I think it's close enough to where I don't care, but it still follows the form of his body. So I think that's pretty good. So those are just like some other things that you should think about while you're working on design. And design, you know, design's not my strong suit, but it's still stuff that I attempt to consider while I'm working here. So while I'm doing this, I'm trying to think like, how far do I need to push this particular piece? Whereas in this case, you know, this piece will never be viewed from this angle in such a way to where someone would say, that looks funny. And I say that right now just because I've been looking at it for a while, but if I left for 30 minutes and came back, you know, maybe I would think, oh, that does look weird. So that's some other stuff that kind of plays into that, but try to think about all that while you're moving forward. Sounds like Craig is a man of many talents. Enjoys his ZBrush modeling as well as writing. Some science fiction, it sounds like. He's a Renaissance boy, not a not a polyglot, but a polyglots for language. There's another one. There's another glot, but I can't remember what it is. Not off the top of my head. So, some connecting pieces, some rope, as well as some trim around this. For the trim around this piece, we're going to try something a little different. It's been a while since I've done this, so I might have to think for a minute so I can remember how to correctly do it. But I'm going to select all these top side polys. Whoops. So I just kind of want to hide all these. And hide everything except for these topside polygons. And polygroup that. And subdivide it a bunch of times. Actually, I shouldn't need, let me duplicate this, and what I'll do is I'll delete lower and delete hidden. So now I just have this piece, this top piece, right? So now if I take a curved tube snap brush and draw it along the edge while holding shift, it should wrap completely around it. And it should do a pretty good job, which it did, at making it nice and clean. So it just kind of depends on the situation and the shape that you're trying to build. Stuff with really hard edge turns, so like on that shoulder piece that we were looking at previously, would be a little bit more difficult. So like on this piece, these corners, those corners make it very difficult for this type of thing to happen. So in this case, this is just a nice kind of clean rounded curve that we got here. So that's just a really nice way to get that real quick in there. So I just drew out the curved tube while holding shift on that geometry. And I no longer need this subdivided piece. I just wanted to duplicate it to make sure it worked correctly. And for this, let's check out how it's looking in terms of size. So I'll probably inflate that a tiny bit. Deformation, inflate at a level of 1. And after I smooth that, that'll look a lot better. All right. Cool, cool. Let's merge that down onto our shoulder. Shoulders. All part of this armor. And I'll turn on dynamic for it. Awesome. Well, I think that looks a lot better, a lot more clean. And we can continue moving forward. I think I was saying, like, try to connect these with some rope. These are just placeholders here. I need to play with these a lot more, but I think it's important to try to get, whoa, what the heck is that? Delete that garbage. Ah, okay. So that's a little bit of a curve out there. That red, I can tell that it's a curve. So just delete. I'm just gonna click delete in my curve functions there, and that'll get rid of that. So that was interesting, as well as what we got going on here. Okay, so that's my fault. I accidentally deleted that. I want to delete that, and again, delete that curve function. All right. So I was just about to duplicate this rope. I was essentially saying it's good practice just to kind of block your stuff out. And I don't need those subdivs. Just kind of have placeholders. It helps you remember what you're wanting to do for moving forward. Not only that, I think the quicker you get in all your parts and pieces, it especially helps with something that's more complex, but the quicker you get all that stuff in, the quicker and easier it is to kind of make sense of everything that you have going on and just kind of see what the finished product is going to look like, even though, you know, it's not quite there yet. I think all that can be very helpful. All right, so 1 second here. Let me pull something up. Boom. All right. Cool. All right. So thinking about, again, how these are going to connect. Let's do a curved tube. And this is just representing the rope that is kind of tying all these pieces together. So I want to kind of, whoa, that's a little bit too big. Let's undo that. And I left that on so that it could kind of follow the form of the geometry happening here. But as you can see, it ends up giving us some pretty terrible shape language. We just want essentially a straight line. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete a bunch of these useless edge loops that are creating these shapes. So just go on through and delete, delete, delete. And I want that curve to follow more of the arm more so than the armor. And I could, it might be easier. Let's do this. Let's delete that. Take our deltoid piece, duplicate it, and I'm just gonna draw directly on this. So curve tube snap again. Not sure if this will work with these being visible, but let's try it. Okay, that looks pretty good, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. Click to apply / delete your curve line there. Should do a pretty good job there. Okay, and just delete that deltoid. And these can probably stand to be, you know, thinned out a bit, but I'll have to probably deflate those. We got some very sharp edges kind of pulling out here, these points. I want to avoid those. Make sure that the other side is looking not quite as sharp. So we're getting that tapering down. I could automatically deflate these, but I would prefer to do it manually, just at least for the time being, so that I can make sure that everything is kind of the same thickness the whole way through. And once I do that, then I can kind of go back through with that inflate slider and say minus, not that much, minus, come on, whoops, minus, we'll say 1, and let's leave it there for now, and we'll mess with it a little bit later. We'll do probably the same thing for these and thicken them up though instead. I kind of like that level of thickness though, so we'll probably actually move these down one more. Whoops. I can't see my keyboard and I can't hit the correct numbers without looking at it, so there's some trial and error there. All right. So yeah, we've successfully created a little bit of some smaller upper arm protection, and we'll also like wrap these around a little bit around the arms so that it makes more sense about how they're attached. I think maybe playing with the scale of these a little bit. It's a good idea. Possibly, let's try turning off our symmetry. Let's just try to see if I can thicken these up. That might not work. Let's try masking that off. Thickening them this way. That does work. Okay. So try to thicken that up. I have a backface masking turned on so that when I move my transpose tool, it only affects these back-facing polys. It's a little bit strange looking, but it's very, very powerful. So just a little bit more thickness on there. We want them to look like they have some kind of protection going on. And I'll mirror those back across. And then tie them around our army. So I still have this split into, just for the bear, I still have them split up into a few parts. As you can see, his biceps, his forearms, or just his upper arm in general. His tricep is on here as well. You can see that this part representing his not your radius, but your I can't think of it off the top of my head for some reason, but representing that, as well as the elbow, and then going into the flat part of the back of the arm, which is a fibrous tendon, I believe, which kind of gives that flat shape to the depression of the tricep here. So I will merge all these together eventually, and I'll make some minor tweaks, like not letting that bow out so much and straightening that up. But yeah, we'll do that. We'll do all that a little bit more down the road, but for now, I'm gonna tie a rope around here. Tie a rope. And if you aren't familiar, if you guys saw me doing the edge around here, so it snapped all the way around that edge, you can actually do a similar thing here where you hold shift and drag off, and it'll wrap a tube all the way around a shape and reconnect to itself, which is very, very helpful. In this case though, it's not exactly where I need it, so I think I'll just kind of do it manually and kind of play around with how I can do this. So just kind of wrap that around and I'll be able to reconnect it to itself. Careful though, as you can see as I do this, it's trying to snap to that back side. So depending on how you have your camera aligned, you can end up missing the front piece there. And just dragging it to the other one, it should reconnect. And I think making this really big and then dropping it back down in size will give us a lot smoother of a curve. So there's another little trick for you guys. We ended up getting an extra little piece of geometry in there. Happens from time to time. You can see that extra curve. No worries though, I'm just gonna delete that. I don't need it. And now I'm just gonna adjust this shape. I might even, let's see what it looks like if I Z-remesh it very, very low. So we can get a little bit of a more clean redistribution of polys, which is nice. Always nice. And I think I'll probably have to adjust the shape of something here. Probably a little bit of both the armor here as well as just the transitions happening. I have all my subtools pretty unorganized right now. That's just kind of how I work. I have how many? 65 subtools in here. So I have a fair number. What do we got? 21 million polys right now. So it's kind of a lot. I'll have to organize these. What I would like to do is, I was showing you that auto collapse feature for the hammer down here. So I was showing you guys that hammer, right? Well, that's just all collapsed into its own subtool group down here. So there's a bunch of subtools in there. And then if I click off of that, it just auto collapses back down. So I need to do the same thing with the armor, get that all in one group so that I can kind of turn it all on and off. But right now I just kind of need to manually alt click on my stuff and kind of go through it, which is fine. That's pretty much how I work for the most part anyway. If I go in here to organize some stuff, it'll be like, oh, I want all the subtools for the helmet to be in the same area. So that kind of stuff. So let's move forward on some more armor. Maybe down here on these parts protecting the legs, I would also like to give him a bit of a cloth belt wrapping around him, helping to keep some armor in place as well. Some stuff can be tied around it, I think. We can play around with it. I'm looking at some other references as well. But yeah, just try to figure out where to go next and keep working on this guy. Like I said, it's just going to be a chill stream today as I continue to figure out where I need to go with this character. Let's see here. How did you make the horns on the helmet? How did I make those horns? 1 second here. The horns on the helmet, you can see here, are just low poly tubes that I just subdivided up through. I'll duplicate them, delete lower, and come on in here. Grab your curved tube brush, curved tube snap, whatever you're using, doesn't really matter. Click, go open your stroke menu, curve modifier size, whoops, come on, curve modifier size, curve fall off, drag all the way up on the left, almost all the way down on the bottom, bam, just like that. Then we'll make our draw size larger, let's say. Check out this. I'll take this end point, pull it out, make it very sharp. Z modeler, I'm just gonna delete some extra edge loops just because it'll clean up our shape. Boom, 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 boom. And you could even use your Z modeler and crease this edge loop here. So now you have the basic starting point for some horns. And I just creased that edge so it got nice and sharp there. But yeah, and then you would just kind of subdivide up through and adjust the shape from there. But yeah, that's pretty much the basics. Not too tough, doesn't take too long to do either. You can do some pretty cool stuff with curves in ZBrush. Alright, so, excuse me. What do we want to work on next, gang? I think I want to work on these lower pads down here. And work on this belt down here as well. One thing that can really help with this sort of thing is adding some color. I haven't done that yet, and I probably should. But color has not been super decided for a lot of this. Yeah, I probably should wait and not try to do that right now because it could take a very long time. And I would prefer to just keep working sculpturally for the time being. He's got his nice cute little tail back here. Oh, I might delete that. I thought it was just fun. I just literally, it's just a sphere that I threw back there. It's got a little puffball tail. Alright, so, what do you guys think? Should we work on the, doing a belt next, which is more kind of cloth material? Maybe. I don't know. I might do more of a, it could be a leather belt, I guess. I was kind of imagining a, do I have a picture of it? I was kind of imagining like a braided, sumo wrestler belt, which like has this thick rope like structure to it. And I do have a rope brush, a rope curve brush that I made quite a while ago. I don't know if it's exactly what I would be looking for. I don't know why that won't increase in size. There we go. So maybe something like that. Or it could be more of like a traditional cloth kind of karate belt, I guess is what I would call it. Cones. Yes, the horns are essentially cones, if that's what you're referring to. Been trying to use cones. Yeah, that's definitely one way to go about that. Let's look up some. Boop. Whoops. Let's look up some sumo belt. Just do wrestler. Belt. So maybe something like this. That's just beautiful. These are fun to look at. Oh man, there's some good times. Dang, that dude's ripped. So something maybe more in this style of just cloth. This is what I was talking about when I said like the thick kind of braided belt. That might be too many things kind of clashing together there. The whole point, you know, I'm trying to create some visual interest in the armor and in all this, but at the same time, I want the interest to kind of work like a gradient, so from top to bottom, more interesting to least interesting. So I want the face to have, you know, it's got this period of rest here where there's no armor. There's no armor in this entire kind of shape here. So with that, it creates some rest for the eye and some visual interest. Your eye is automatically drawn towards the face. With the arms, they're going to be mostly, I think, not covered in armor. One, for the character's mobility, but two, it can help maybe lead the eye from that period of rest into the hammer, and then the hammer has this detail on it that'll have more visual interest. So kind of thinking about that. So if I do this kind of belt, I'm worried that it might be too noisy. So we already have all this going on here. Whereas I think a more simple design, like I think this is super interesting and cool, but I'm thinking that something more just kind of cloth wraps and tied together in the front might be better for the character as a whole. I don't know. That's my current thought process. So let's move forward on it. So I don't know. Let me look at some references here that I got. Most of the references for the just straight samurai armor, it's got like a little bit of a, looks like a leather kind of belt strapped around the armor, helping to maybe cinch it at the bottom. And then it's got like a billion cloth strands attaching to these armored pads that kind of protect the legs and groin here at the bottom, which that looks like a single sheet. That might be, maybe I'll just do something like this. I didn't want to make it like perfectly exactly like samurai armor, but maybe that's for the best. And instead of doing like a billion strands, I can just do a single sheet that connects that. Let's play around with that first before I try to twist the formula too much. And he might need something to cover up his butt, you know. Got to keep that butt protected in war. I don't have any images of samurai armor from the back in my reference sheet. I could probably look some up though. Got to figure out about that samurai butt armor. It's very important. Alright, so this is a hard surface. This is going to be more so leather, I think, than anything else. And these are going to be, oh, I saw backface masking on. These are going to be hanging down from straps connected here. And in the case of a human character, the armor ends above the waist and then it hangs down a little bit, but I think in this case it's going to be a bit tighter, a bit closer to this belt up here, simply because anatomically the character that I have got this big kind of chest on him. I think this stuff needs to be closer and protecting like the upper portion of his legs. These are just placeholders down here. A lot of stuff again. Like I said, I like to work and get as much as I can in place as quickly as I can. So let's duplicate this or actually, I'm sorry. Let's duplicate this piece, and this is going to be the connector. Whoops. And let's hide all the garbage that we're not using. Just to make it a little bit easier for us to see as we rotate around. Okay, so the belt is going to be leather. It's going to have some straps wrapped around it. It's going to kind of help, kind of like belt loops to keep that in place. And then that belt is going to have from it extending this material, which will be cloth-like and be attached to these armored pads that will be protecting that portion of the body, lower portion. So this will be more thin. I'll probably just start off by creasing a bunch of this stuff and then moving forward on that. So like I said, these are going to have to be pretty short. I'm just trying to think of, right now I'm just going through the thought process here of like how this needs to be lined up, because it's very important that, you know, I have a good sense of what I need it to do and look like going in, or else I'm just kind of flying blind. So from here, this belt will have essentially, how can we do this? Let's bevel some edges. I'm just going to do every other one. And essentially what I'm trying to do here, now why did that happen? That's annoying. Essentially what I'm trying to do here, wow, that is super annoying. Okay, ZBrush. Okay, let's play games. Let's extrude. We'll do this a different way. Poly loop. Extrude poly loop. Extrude poly loop. Extrude poly loop. Just go through doing that on all of these. Let's try selecting something. Damn, ZBrush. ZBrush does not want to play nice. Let's see if we can. There we go. Thank you. All right, now we're making progress. So now we have what could be some nice clean belt loops there, and we might have to do some resizing and some other stuff, but we can crease some edge loops here. Well, actually, these are going to be, I think, more of that ropey material that I'm going to use to connect the armor pieces up here. So more rope-like, so I don't want to make it creased, because that would not then look like rope. So let's try to inflate those a little bit. Let's try to scale them to be a little bit taller, and I'll have to kind of modify these by hand, which is fine, no worries. I honestly, the more control you have over what's going on, I think a lot of people look for some quick automatic features, but in all honesty, I prefer to just be able to automate or manually kind of control as much as I can. So these will be the rope-like structure that and we'll mess with those later more, but it's important to kind of, again, block all this in. This will be hanging down from the inside of the armor. I'm going to turn these off. Turn off these side panels. This piece here will kind of hang down like this in front of the legs. Awesome. Okay, so now we just need to figure out what that's going to look like. Jean Alexander says hello. Craig says, "Are you gonna 3D print at some point?" if you're specifically referring to this character, after I'm completely done going through the process of sculpting and painting this character in ZBrush, yes, I would like to get a 3D print ready version, and if I can, throw it up on Shapeways. First as a full color sandstone 3D print, similar to this guy here. And then I'll order one for myself, and then if anybody else wants one, they can grab one. And that'll probably be the end for this character, and then I'll move on to the next one. Except for in February, I'll be getting an SLA 3D printer. I helped support the Bean 3D printer on Kickstarter. And I'm pretty familiar with FDM and SLA 3D printing, and I've been doing it for a while. So once I get that, I would like to maybe do some more high-res printed stuff, a little more high-res than the sandstone model I just showed you guys, and do something that is more, what's the word? Garage kit, I guess. Where you could, like, maybe I'll 3D print all the pieces, key everything, and if somebody wants one to paint, then maybe I can arrange that somehow. Maybe as like a new tier on Patreon, or just try to see if anybody's even interested in getting 3D prints that they could paint. It would be a lot higher quality just because it being an SLA print. You are looking to buy a 3D printer as well. Yeah. I don't know if you can still get the early bird stuff on the Bean 3D printer, but it's a pretty great deal for what you get for this SLA machine. I would definitely recommend at least looking it up. So I pretty much want to do. It's pretty much the same basic shape language that I have up here for these shoulder pieces. So I'm wondering, and this is an interesting problem here. I just duplicated those shoulder pads and it pushed them up here quite a bit, and that's been happening. I think that's just a bug with the newest version of ZBrush. It's been happening a few times. If anybody knows what causes it, I would very much like to know, but for the time being, we'll just keep dealing with it. But yes, sometimes when you duplicate a piece, it'll space that geometry out in a different location. It can be very, very annoying though. Let's auto groups, sorry. Auto groups this, and let's try to repurpose this. So like I said, it's pretty much the same shape language, just a little bit more flat for this piece. These are supposed to be, they almost, I don't know what this material is, wood or bamboo or what, but it looks like they're panels of, it almost looks like plastic. I would assume that it's not though, just based on its age. But it looks like these panels kind of give it some flexibility to its shape, which could be interesting. It looks like these up here actually have that as well, so we might play around with that, which is kind of why all these are tied individually so that they can curve and wrap around the form a little bit better. So we might play around with that a little bit more. I actually like that a lot, but it'll take some time to get there, as it's a lot more complex. We would have to split these shapes into 3 different sections, which isn't, the end of the world. I can show you how to do that real quick. It would just be using that Q-mesh feature in the Z-modeler brush. But let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Let's flatten this guy out, and then we can kind of go from there. So rotate. And this is probably not going to be as clean as we want, just because of issues with geometry, poly loops not lining up. But it'll give us a good basic kind of starting point. And I don't need it to be perfectly flat. We can also kind of just mess with this. All right. Uh-oh, dogs are coming out to play. Once one starts barking, they all start barking. Dogs around here are crazy. Yeah, I think that's pretty good for our basic shape here. I think I want this to... Do I want this to taper just as much as the shoulder pieces? I will leave it tapering for now. Whoops, didn't mean to duplicate, meant to delete. I'll leave it tapering for now, and then maybe I can mess with it as I see fit later here down the road. So essentially it's going to be the same thing, this kind of cascading shape of these armor pieces. So we could like try to get a real basic version of that. And maybe we could even kind of scale these down. That might make that look a little bit more visually interesting. And I kind of already like that already, so let's just see what a few more of those would look like. Yeah, I think that's a kind of an interesting shape that we could play around with. And then of course we would have to, you know, get these into alignment and work on kind of splitting them up into different segments, like I said. But of course, we only need the first one to do that with. And then we'll just kind of duplicate down the chain like I was just doing. And in terms of, in terms of the trim, so if I were, for example, to split these up, and by split up I mean actually like cut these into 3 different segments, so right, left, and middle. I think I would have to redo the trim, which isn't too big of a deal, because the trim, I mean obviously if these purple pieces are split into 3 different pieces, the trim can't still be positioned the way that it is. So we'll have to think about how we want to do that and play around with it as well. It might be just as simple as adding an actual Z-modeler bevel to the geo, which is a pretty good way to go about it, but we will see when we get there. So let's start on this bottom middle piece and go from there. Your stream keeps saying offline, but when you refresh it comes back up. That's not good. Let's see. My stream health is green. It says stream health live. Like green is the best that it can be, I think. Hopefully, if anybody else can throw something up in the chat, if you can hear me, see me, everything's cool, that would be awesome. But hopefully it's not on my end. It might just be on your end. Hopefully that's the case. But yes, I am getting a all green on my end. So if anybody else can chime in and say, you're all cool, you're good, let me know, let me know. All right. So how I'm going to split this up is, I think, pretty interesting. I've done this more than a few times. So I'm just going to go over this edge. Yawn a little bit. It looks like these are out of... Oh, that's right. I didn't... Okay, so mirror and weld. Okay, that's not what we want. Move this. Mirror and weld. There we go. So now this is perfectly aligned with the x-axis. So I'm going to bevel this edge, these two edges, and then I'm going to Q-mesh these purple polygons. And I'm going to Q-mesh them all the way through to the other side. And if we can get it to cooperate just like that, it should delete the polygon completely. So Q-mesh all the way through the other side, and now you can see that we have kind of a nice clean separation between all of those. If I turn on my dynamic again, you're going to see that I'm going to have to crease those edges once more. So crease edge loop, crease edge loop, and two people are saying everything's good on their end. So Craig, it sounds like it might just be on your end. So all right, and as well as creasing these edges here, here, boom, boom. All right, easy peasy. And then again, thinking about how we're gonna work with this bevel, I say we just delete it for now. And think about how these pieces can kind of interlock real quick here. All right. So again, I could just start by duplicating those pieces and kind of mirroring them down the chain. Let me show you what I was talking about for creating the trim by just beveling the edge. So come on through, do a pretty simple bevel, and then extrude a poly loop and get a little bit of trim that way. And obviously we have to crease some edges or bevel some edges again if we want to make sure that that's really tight. And come on, let me grab that edge. Can be a little bit annoying and difficult to deal with. All right, and get all those corners. So maybe something like that. It's a lot more clean. If you're worried about how hard the edge is here, you could Alt-click to get rid of your creasing on these edges. So that rounds it out a little bit around there, but still we have these hard creases for the corner. You could get rid of those, but going from a soft transition into a hard creased edge, it's a really weird kind of transition. You see there that we're going to end up getting some weird stuff. I think we just keep it rounded for the time being. I don't think that looks too bad. We can maybe mess with it a little bit more later, but at least give it some visual interest for the time being, and do the same thing here. So bevel, start off by beveling the edge loop again. Next step is to extrude out. And once you make one action, so let's say I pull an extrusion out. Let's say I pull a single poly extrusion out like this. If you just tap or click, the next extrusion that you do, the next action that you do will be the exact same distance as your previous action. So that can be very helpful for, you know, I want these to be exactly the same distance. So that's one way to go about it. And of course, crease a bunch of edges, make sure we get everything. Looks like that edge didn't crease. Something's not creasing here. Let's do an auto groups. Split hidden. So I just want to be able to better see what's going on in here. So for some reason, that edge wasn't creasing. I didn't have it on edge loop. I'm an idiot. No worries. We'll just redo all that. So crease edge loop, and merge back down. Sweet, 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 sweet. Big move brush with back face masking. I'm just trying to add a little bit more depth. It kind of starts to taper out here towards the edges for the bevel. Want that to be more uniform. As well as get a little bit of curve in here, not curve in. So pull that out, pull that out. And much better, I think. And now we can kind of duplicate this and think about how this rope would kind of interlock into these segments. Again, in my reference, you can see that the rope is kind of like weaving in and out of each segment, going down the chain and then ending on this last shorter one. So I think we'll probably do something similar. Like I said, it's a chill stream, so there's lots of yawning and lots of coffee. But not coffee today, actually just water. All right. Excuse me. Let's duplicate this piece. Same as last time, control click and drag. Pull that down the chain. Let's interlock those a little bit better. Scale that in like we did last time. This little white circle on transpose will kind of help center that scale option for you, which is very, very helpful. Dinner calling. Hopefully I'll be back before you finish the stream. Go grab some grub, friend, and come on back when you're done. Yeah. Enjoy your foods. And we will same thing for this piece. Scale down. And let's auto groups. I want to get rid of this last one. It's a little bit too much, I think. So we'll stick with 3. Just proportionally. And then so this piece here, this is just a block obviously right now, but it's supposed to represent the cloth that is going to, or the rope that's going to tie all these together. So it's coming down from the belt. And let's actually do this. I'm going to delete that. So we're going to try to make this make as much sense as we possibly can. Mask out these pieces. And align these, as well as take this guy back here and bring him forward. So we'll try to get the connection pieces kind of hanging off of these. So 1, 2, 3, and those will kind of cascade down. So next we can just kind of duplicate that as a placeholder. And let's just do one of these. I think a curved tube might work best for this. Oh, we still have our size modifier on from our last tweak. Get that in there. Oh, well, actually, you know what? I'm stupid. Just click append. Let's just add a torus or a ring 3D, right? What is called a torus, or is it torus? Am I saying that right? It's been a while since I've seen the word. Which is the common, I think, name for this shape. Another way to scale down, just to come into your size panel, you can just use this slider. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's not. And like, for example, if I want to scale from this specific location, from like that specific position, I can't really use size. Very, very tedious, slow work, but it all starts kind of adding up, I think. So it might not seem like maybe we've, you know, done a lot, but like I said, I think it does start to add up really quick, and some stuff starts to come together more and more so as we go. I'm gonna need to go run and grab some more agua here in a minute, but I want to kind of finish blocking out what this is gonna look like, and then I'll go do that real quick. So we'll take like a 5-minute break so I can get some agua and relieve my some agua mizu water. I don't know how to say water in any other language. That was 3. What's water in Italian, guys? What's water in French? Oh, okay. So this is gonna be rope, right? Hanging down from this belt. Let's might be easier. I'm gonna have to adjust all of this at once, and the way I'm gonna do that is transpose master. But I'm gonna have to wait to do that. I think just duplicating this and rotating it. Fun thing that you can do in here, by holding shift and rotating on its central axis, I can snap that in degrees. Actually, I should be able to, I won't be able to snap that to be perfectly vertical, unfortunately. But I can snap to, what am I making there? 22.5 degree turns, I think. Yeah, I believe that's correct. And the way you can adjust that is in your preferences, transpose. I think it's transpose. Wait, what is it? It's in here somewhere. Oh, here we go, rotation steps. So currently it's set to 4. If you hold control, it'll give you some info about how this works. It's actually wrong. It says if you set this to 10, the transpose line will snap to every 36 degrees. So that's saying that it's a base of 360 degree rotation divided by whatever number you put in here. So 360 divided by 10 is 36 degrees of rotation. But that's actually a lie. They're lying to you. The rotation steps is on a base of 90 degrees. So as I just proved there, I made 4 rotation steps and it went 22.5 degrees each time. So if I wanted to rotate 10 degrees each time, I would make the rotation steps 9. And now when I rotate with the transpose tool, I can do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and we're back to where we were. So I'm holding the shift key while I'm doing that. So that's a little tip for you. If you're trying to get a very specific degree of rotation, that's how you would do it. But again, remember that that is base 90 and not 360 like it says. Yeah, that's been in, I don't know if that's just like maybe how it used to work and they changed it at one point, but I should probably, someone, probably me, should make a report, tell the dev team. I'm sure there's just so many stuff that it all is something, and that's such like a little thing that nobody probably, I doubt any of you even knew that was a thing in ZBrush. It's not used very often, but if you're trying to get specific degrees of rotation and try to figure out, like, again, for example, when I was working on toys, if the arm had to articulate a maximum of 45 degrees, I had to make sure that it wouldn't clip with anything within that 45 degrees. So, just as an example there. So this isn't perfectly vertical. If I do a mirror and weld, it will become perfectly vertical, but we do get that weird edge in the middle. So if I Z-remesh that really low, and making sure that X symmetry is turned on when I do that, it should kind of clean it up a little bit. It's a little bit uneven, but honestly I don't care. This is just going to be a rope that's kind of, I think, weaving in and out of these armored slats. Whatever they are made of. I wanna look that up later. I won't do it right now, but I want to find out what this armor is made of. Water is EAU, E-A-U in French. E-A-U. U. I'm just gonna say ew, because that is how I would say it. But honestly, water's like my favorite drink, so. Always got to have the Contigo with you. My lifelong goal is to actually get sponsored by Contigo. This is my one goal in life. I must get sponsored by Contigo. This thing has seen better days. I don't think I've shown this on camera in quite a while, but this thing I carry with me pretty much everywhere I go. So apparently you pronounce E-A-U as O in French. So O is water. But you know, I think I like ew a lot more, so we're just gonna stick with ew, and it's too late because I've already converted it to memory, and now I'm forever just going to call it ew. Ew. Thank God I'm not going to France anytime soon, or Canada, or do they speak French in South America? South Africa as well. Anywhere where they're speaking any kind of French to where I could completely embarrass myself. Thank God I'm not going anytime soon. Who knows, in the future though, maybe we can embarrass ourselves a lot more. Alright, so I want to kind of line a bunch of this up. I'm going to turn off our legs because they're getting in the way. Turn off that on. I'll keep it for now, but Control click lets you soften your mask, so we can get in there a little bit. Cool, cool, cool. So that's going to be the basic, actually, I want it to look like this. So I want it to look like it is flowing, this rope is flowing behind the armor, popping through one side and going through on the other. And then I would connect these pieces in some respect. and then we can kind of figure out how this would all work with gravity and all that as we go too. Just trying to make some sense of everything so that you look at it and don't say, nope, that just looks dumb. We don't want that. So I don't want to shrink this. I don't want to scale this completely like I did before because the rope is obviously the same thickness, but maybe I can squash it so that the transition is a little bit less. And then same thing down here. And these will need to be the same on the sides over here. I don't want to rotate them per se. I think maybe just move them in like this and maybe add a slight rotation to them. And of course, you know, do a mirror and weld again. So I think that's starting to look a bit more visually interesting from the front here. We'll have to, you know, tie all this together in some way from all of these for it to really start kind of having some cohesion and making physical sense, so that you know, it just doesn't look like a bunch of floating parts and pieces, which it looks less so now, but still we want to have that be completely gone, right? Want it to make sense in reality. So I think that looks a lot better. Starting to look more cool. I'm gonna go take a bathroom break, but more importantly, get water for my poor little boy throat. And I guess I'll just be back in like 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna mute my mic and put it on my pause screen, and I'll be back in a sec. So I'll see you guys back in like 5 minutes. So be right back. All right, we are back. So let's take a look at some of this armor for the bottom portion that's going to be covering the legs a little bit more, and I'll probably replicate that that design up through these deltoid pieces up here, which have a specific name that I cannot think of off the top of my dome. But if anybody knows what those are called, not a curious. That's a sword, I think. Oh man, it's like right on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of what those are called. I'm sure one of you knows. Let me know in the chat what those shoulder armor pieces are called, as I cannot remember. Alright, so we'll try to replicate this through to the sides. So these are tied onto the belt, and then all these pieces are then tied together themselves. And they are tied vertically, so this piece to this piece to this piece, but they are not tied and connected. Well, maybe they are tied in the back horizontally. I actually can't see the back of them. That might help keep them together. Actually, that's the only thing that makes sense. So they are, I guess, obviously then tied in some way. So let's mirror and weld. So yes, I do like this a lot more than what we had, what I was going to do previously. I think this makes a lot more sense and kind of fits with the whole motif a lot better. So from here, what we would do is just append another Ring 3D or Taurus, sorry, and get that into position. Rotate, please. Whoa, way out here on the outskirts. Need symmetry. All right. So these are going to be a little bit more stretched, pulling on it from the weight. And I can kind of get an idea of what I want that to look like. And I don't want that to be going through that geometry there, so I kind of want that to sit on top. So trying to get all this to work together is going to be the difficult part of this. Trying to make it all look like it's working and not kind of just breaking physics. Okay. So I just wanted to mirror and weld that real quick to make sure that we're still good on our symmetrical plane. I'll probably merge these two pieces together, these two, just so that I can have that looking as if it's crisscrossing down through here. I think that makes the most sense for how the geometry is working, or how that rope would actually be flowing through there. Same thing here. And I actually could do that but this really isn't going to be seen ever. So I do want it there. I do want it to, you know, be there and make sense, but it's okay if it's kind of done in a bit of a more simple manner than what essentially I want to fake reality. I mean, that's the whole point of this, right? So we're trying to fake what it would look like in reality, but it's okay if I kind of bend the truth here even a little bit more, I think. So Dynamesh, I jacked up that resolution because these pieces are very, very small. And then we can ZRemesh very, very low. And I think that will be good enough for the backside of a piece that will most likely never ever be seen. So that's also, you know, something that I like to remind people of. Don't spend this is why people spend, you know, so long on the face of a character, is because it's the most looked at part of a character. Similarly, if you have something that's not really ever going to be seen, well then don't spend more time on it than you need. I know I used to get caught up in that kind of stuff all the time. I'm like, well, I want it to be really good over here too, you know, I want to be able to do my best work, but especially in a production setting, that just simply can't be the case. You just can't spend that much time on the little details a lot of the time. You just have to kind of spend the time where you need it most, and then continue doing a lower level of detail with everything else, which isn't necessarily, if you have all the time in the world, then do it if you want to, but don't think that you have to. Okay, so we'll do the exact same thing here. I'm going to take this piece and duplicate it, and because I don't want to go through appending another ring, I'm just going to get the ring back from this piece. Are you okay with deleting your undo history? Absolutely. I don't care. I don't need it. So we got that ring back, and I should have duplicated that before, but I didn't. No worries. Got it back. And now it's just a matter of rotating this piece. Not too much. Rotating it to be more in alignment, and getting it to fit in position here with everything. So it's going to be having more of a slant to it now as it tapers down. And we can do that pretty easily. So we're just going to do the exact same thing that we did there in the middle, and then mirror it back to the other side. So if you've looked at the full character here, I have not broken symmetry yet, and that's fine. I probably won't do that until I get into more of the high-res detail on some stuff, as well as posing, which won't be for quite a while. Sometimes I like to work in pose directly from the start, but more often than not, I can save a lot of time and work by starting with symmetry. And we want this piece. So that one. So merge those down. Dynamesh them real high together. ZRemesh them real low together. It should automatically mirror it to the other side for us, just like it did. And I think that looks good enough for moving forward. As well as, you know, getting a quick connection horizontally between these. So I think, I think we'll just do like a single strand. So curved tube snap, something like this, a little less thick. This is just to kind of show that these are tied together in some form or fashion. Again, it's the backside facing portion of this, so I'm not super worried about it looking exactly correct. So for this, we will just stick with a basic kind of connection there. And I think that looks good enough for us to kind of move forward and figure out what we want to do next. And real quick here, let me just check something. Oh gosh, I opened up my browser and just a thumbnail of that is like hovering in the background of the sumo we were looking up earlier. Oh gosh, it's gonna give us some nightmares for a little bit. Let's see. All right, cool. We're all good. So just some of this, just a tiny bit. But again, I think that looks good enough for us to kind of move forward. Now, like I said, we'd only be kind of creating one of these, and then we can modify the additional pieces that will hang from the legs. I'm thinking we might need to change the way these belt loop pieces work, how we have them currently. So up here, ooh, I did a bad thing. How do I? Okay, so I have some. You know what? I'm just gonna delete some garbage out of here that I don't think I need. Delete. Okay, and now I just need to slightly reorganize some geometry. Just a little bit. So 5 seconds, and we'll get back to it. Again, for those who have not seen, let me show you the hammer that I created for this character. I worked on the hammer a few days ago. I should be able to just turn that on. Yep. So this is the hammer for our bear samurai character, whose name currently is Kumadori. Kuma because he is a bear, and then a combination of Midori, which is green, both Japanese. And this is his hammer. This is his hammer that he's gonna swing around. Probably not like that. Maybe more like this. So yeah, I worked on this a few days ago. A lot of it is just using some of ZModeler plus some live boolean stuff to get these shapes on the side. In terms of the like demon head that I have on here, I just sculpted it by hand. I really didn't spend that much of time on it, just because it's just a kind of side piece on the hammer alone. I might like return to it and do some more stuff, but at least for the time being, I'm just gonna keep it the way it is. If I were to 3D print this, I would absolutely need to make some changes to the mouth and the teeth, just because of printing purposes. Those would literally never come out. I would probably need to thicken up these horns a little bit as well, unless I was doing some SLA. And it also depends on what size I print it at. So we'll see when we get there, but it's good to think about that stuff along the way. So placeholders we can delete. These we can merge together in some form or fashion, just enough that I can, let me see if I got everything here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so 6, rope, 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 rope. Okay, so none of these have subdivision levels. All of it's just dynamic smooth that I have turned on and off. So I'm totally comfortable merging all these pieces together. So I'm just gonna do that real quick. So now I have this single piece that I can all at once just click the D key and turn on dynamic smooth and get a little better sense of what that would look like. But it also lets me duplicate all of this at once so that I can duplicate it and move it to the side. And it'll be the same part and piece that kind of covers the leg on the side, so we'll have a middle one and a left and right leg covering. It looks like the ones on the leg are pretty similar to the middle piece. For this one, maybe a little bit thinner and shorter, just kind of looking at some of the other references. So we can kind of do the same thing, keep it pretty much the same, but then maybe just adjust the size just a tad. So let's just do a general scale in. And I don't want to do this too much, so I think I'm just going to scale it just a little bit, just what we did there. And rotate this to be kind of at the correct angle. And I'll probably have to move a belt loop to get this to fit better. But we can start getting some stuff into position. And do some rotation, some move, and get this all set up. Coo. And rotate a little bit. I think maybe it was a mistake to scale down a little bit. Let's just go back up. You know what? No, I'm fine. I'm fine with keeping that small. I'm fine with that. So what I'll do instead is I'll just take this geometry and stretch it over. It's rope after all, right? And the rope will be obviously right around this belt loop. Man, I could not say belt to save my life there. Right around that belt loop, and that'll be where that one connects. Rope is flexible, but this more hard surface material is not. So we kind of keep all that in mind. It sounds obvious, when I say it out loud, but you would be surprised by how many people take forms in the human body and bones, and all of a sudden your bones are made of rubber, and it becomes glaringly obvious that someone doesn't understand how something works in reality very quickly when you have something like that. So we can wrap that around that piece there. I think that looks fine. Maybe push it back a little bit. Gary, hey, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Glad you could join us. Working on our newest character, our bear boy, Bear Samurai, and we're working on some armor down here. So this is looking pretty detailed, and it's actually, I think, currently drawing too much attention. But as I go back through, and we'll make more details and more changes as we go through. So we don't want the bottom to hold more attention than the top for sure. That would be very, very bad. Very bad design on my part. So let's play with this a little bit more. And man, it's a long one, long stretch. I was wondering why he had feet for knees. Yeah. So he's just an anthropomorphic stylized bear character right now. Bunch of placeholders still there. In all honesty, I want the feet and the legs to hold such little visual interest that it's almost like you can put your hand over them and they don't even exist. I want all the visual interest, you know, like I said earlier, top to bottom, most interesting at the top, and become less and less interesting as you go down the chain. And that's kind of just a general design practice that you kind of want to always keep in mind when working on your characters. The whole point of this character, this bear samurai hammer wielding boy, is to, you know, spend a little bit longer time on a character for a project than what I would normally do. So normally I'm trying to get a lot done in terms of content for a month, not only to create a lot of tutorials online and stuff like that and help you guys out, but also for Patreon, so I can give away a lot of cool stuff there. But I think this month is going to be more of a focus on just a lot higher level of detail for something that we're working on, a lot higher level of finish as well. So we will get there, but it will take time, so we will keep pushing forward with this dude. Just trying to get a little bit of uniformity to this rope right now, as it's looking a little thin in some places. And I'll play with that more later, but of course now I can just mirror and weld this across, and just like that we have all three of those bottom panels, and that's creating a lot more visual interest down there. I think that went pretty quick for, you know, just going from block out to getting to that level. We can do more with it as we go. Excuse me. Let's figure out what we want to work on next. I think I'm gonna have to do the same thing for these top, not gauntlet. Man, I cannot. I asked you guys, no one answered the call. What are those shoulder armor pieces called? It's gonna bother the crap out of me. Shoulder armor. What are pauldrons? Of course, a pauldron. I knew that. That word was like way in the back of my head, just whispering to me and being very, very rude and not coming to the front of my mind. Couldn't think of it. Okay, so we have these lower pieces kind of figured out a lot more, right? But again, we have too much visual interest, too much high resolution detail focusing down there. So now the next step is to shift that visual interest up a lot more. So how can we do that? So when you're thinking about your forms, you break it up into three categories: primary, secondary, and tertiary. And from there, you have your basic forms, your most basic shapes. So this is a primary form. It's a very basic shape, right? But then we start, or let's say the face. This round shape here, if we go silhouette, this kind of round or even almost heart-shaped piece here, that would be your primary form, your silhouette almost. And then once we start getting into secondary forms, maybe like this inflation for the lip, or the almost crease-like nature to the brow here that we see going on there. some of that. So that would be secondary forms. And then tertiary forms, you can maybe say that that's like stuff like the rope weaving in and out of these pieces. So the basic way to think about it is your secondary forms connect your primary and tertiary forms. They act as a bridge between those things oftentimes. But that's not to say that you can't just have a high resolution, you know, skin texture or whatever on your most basic flat surface primary form. It's absolutely not what I'm saying, but that's a good way to kind of think about it, that secondary stage of form. These square shapes go from what is a basic primary like belly shape up here, right, into these secondary forms of square shapes, into these tertiary forms of these ropes connecting those squared armor pieces together. So just a little bit of a flow there for that. So what we want to do is start getting more high resolution tertiary details to add some more visual interest up towards not only just the face, but just like the upper portion in general, so we can kind of have some more visual interest up there. But to do that, we need to kind of create some more secondary forms as well to kind of lead into that. So we want to do that, but we want to avoid everything looking too busy at the same time. So it's kind of like a juggling act. There's a lot of stuff that you have to think about very, very hard, and make some decisions, try some things, throw some things away that you just think aren't working, and keep kind of moving forward. For me, looking at this for you guys, whoops, didn't mean to click that. You don't know where I'm going to go with this exactly, and I don't know exactly where it's going to end up at the very end, but I have a better idea than you, right? It's my character, I'm working on it. So these pieces here, I have them all split up, but I'm going to merge all these together eventually. So I know that this is going to be a smooth place of rest. Yes, there will be some secondary forms going on here, but for the most part, this is all going to be one piece and have a nice smooth transition to all of them. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to give a period of rest here for the face. You know, oftentimes when like guys are drawing or painting or sculpting or whatever, like a sexy girl, they'll give her like a low cut top and have nothing in sorry, my syntax in the way, have like nothing in like the cleavage area, because it creates a period of rest, and your eyes are naturally drawn to that period of rest. So we're going to draw the eyes to our bare cleavage here, essentially, is what I'm saying. But that's all stuff, like I said, it's like a juggling act. We got to keep it all in mind and try to figure it all out as we keep moving forward. So we will get there. I think that just looking at some of this armor is a great example. So sure, there's a lot of detail going on down here, but it's all repetitive detail. And with repetitive detail, it becomes very, very boring for your eye and for your brain very quickly, because what happens is your brain sees the pattern, immediately recognizes it, and says, I understand this, I no longer need to look at it. But when you come up here and look at the face, there's a lot more visual interest going on with this armor. It's not quite as a recognizable pattern. So recognizable pattern, a little less so on the arms here, I think. You know, this armor was made to protect you, not so much to follow the best rules of design, but so there might be too much visual interest here drawing your eye. It's just a little too random and haphazard. Repetitive with some pieces that kind of pull out your attention. Some pieces here that can do the same, something new, and then leading into something that looks kind of a lot more organic and a lot more interesting for your eyes to kind of look at. So that's the goal that we're going for. Like even something like this where we have 3 screws or bolts or whatever these are kind of holding this piece onto the helmet. That is a tertiary detail that can kind of help draw attention. So all these things playing together, like I said, it's a juggling act and trying to figure out how that's all going to work together. It's not easy. I'm not amazing at it for sure, so we can keep pushing forward and keep trying to figure it all out together. But that's the basics of what we're trying to accomplish here as we go on moving forward. So the next step is to figure out where we want to go with that, right? Craig has returned for dinner. Welcome back, Craig. Tell Tweak I say hi. I think that I wouldn't mind merging some of this geometry together for our actual bear boy. So let's do that, just so that I can start kind of solidifying his anatomy a little bit better. And that'll probably take a minute to do, but I just want to turn off a bunch of this geometry that we got going on. We have a lot of parts and pieces, like I said. We're at 62 subtools right now. Even more actual separated geometry than that. Some of it's just merged together. But let's see. We lowered the poly count just a tiny bit. But yes, we are gonna start merging some stuff here in a little bit. So let's get to a point where we can do that. Alright. Let this quick save happen. If your quick save is kind of getting in the way, you can always come up to preferences, quick save, and maybe make that a little bit longer. For me, quick saves normally happen pretty quick, so I'm not normally one to be bothered by them. I might want to change the legs here a little bit. So this is the base character who's been covered in armor this whole time, so you haven't really been able to get a good look at him until now. So this is what I'm working with. He's pretty simple, in all honesty, and that was kind of the look that I was going for. And you guys know me. You guys know I love to split my geometry up into many parts. And I think it's time that we kind of merge some of those together and clean some of that up. So let's do that. Let's do that. So I'm just holding shift and pressing this move up arrow. That's going to allow me to move everything up to the top just so I have it in the same place and can start merging some geometry together. I'll bear that in mind. If you swap the bear face with a human face, you'll get a dwarf. Yeah, a dwarf. He's got pretty long arms here. A dwarf, and we can turn off his little fluffy tail. Yes, I wanted to go for something squat, a little more rounded in shape language. Your jokes are unbearable. Oh my gosh, you guys are berserker. All right. We're done here. No more bear puns. Please, more bear puns, guys. Please, more bear puns. So let's merge some geo together. Let's try 2000 for our Dynamesh. Almost 1 million polys. Again, this is going to be cleaned up. I think that's fine. I'm not going to finish cleaning this up quite yet, just because I'll have to unhide everything and rehide everything again, and that is unbearable, so we will not do that. We will wait. But I will combine the pieces of the arm next. So deltoid bicep, forearm, and this wrist piece. Oh, and that's the back. So I have the back of the arm separated there. I want to flatten this out. If you look here from the side, it's got a little bit of a curve to it. I can't remember the name of that bone. Your radius is on top. You always say your radius, it's rad. Do a thumbs up. The radius is the one that connects to your thumb. Hey, that's rad. Now you'll never forget it. What's the other one? Not your tibia, fibula. That's in your leg. Ulna. Your ulna. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. Names are important, guys. Names are important. All right, so let's merge these pieces together. Ooh, mouse is freaking out. Merge all these pieces together. I don't need those subdivs. Merge down. Yeah. Uh-oh, what'd I do? Ah, okay. I got really worried there. I thought I merged something I wasn't supposed to. This wrist piece. I just had that in there as a placeholder. It'll act as a good transition, I think, for this. So I'll keep it in there. Merge it in. And we'll do the same 2200 Dynamesh. Merge all that. And that happened pretty quick for 1,000,000 polys. So I'm happy with that. And then we'll go back through and again smooth all that out in a bit. I want to try to get all my organic parts and pieces up here at the top of my subtool list, so then I can kind of organize these a little bit better. So let me turn those off. Do I want to merge those to the back? Yes, I do. Do the same thing. So I'm not gonna I'm gonna just very lightly clean up this transition, because I want this transition to come through after I smooth some stuff out some more. So I want that to come through. I want, this one's tough. So for the pecs, I might keep them separated for now from the belly. The belly is just a really simple shape. It's just essentially a sphere with a little bit of a tuck in for the obliques and pull out for the groin here. But I want this transition to stay very sharp. I want to be able to, well, you know what? It's going to be covered by armor anyway. Forget it. Forget it. Made the decision. Trash it. Just merge it. It's essentially like deleting your subtool history. It's essentially like deleting your history on something. So I'm essentially saying from here forward, I'm solidifying this basic shape into this, and I'm not going to want to change it too much in the future. That's essentially what I'm saying when I do this. So there can be some hesitation before making a decision. Next up, we'll do the hands down here. For the hands, I have some very basic geometry for these fingers. They're essentially squares. Someone was asking me how I sculpted the hands on my Toadette amoeba that I recently did. It's pretty much just like this, pretty much the same way. I was explaining the fingers. They're essentially cubes or rectangle cubes, stretched cubes. Words are tough, guys. And you just create a beveled edge loop for the crease of a knuckle, and then you put another one in the middle, and that'll lend a little bit of that creasing to those as you subdivide them, so the knuckles kind of stand out quite a bit more. But then you still have some very basic geometry here to work with. So the question is, are we are we okay with merging these together, the hands and the fingers? The answer to that is, I think not. No, not yet at least. I will probably keep the hands and the fingers separated until I do some posing. But luckily, taking a look at this, I can see that I have 5 subdivision levels for each of these pieces, so I can comfortably merge down on all of these, and you'll see down here that I still have my subdivision levels, so I can still step down and make changes where I need to. But I'm just kind of trying to clean up this subtool list as well as my geometry here. So there we go, some hands. This tail I just kind of like threw in as a joke, but I kind of like it. It's just, you know, it's cute. He's a cute little fluffer tail. So we might keep that on there for a little bit longer and just play with it. But what do we want to do with these legs? Turn all this back on. So he's very symmetrical right now, of course. He's completely aligned on the x-axis. I might add some twist to these legs so they're not sticking perfectly straight, just to make them look a little bit better. I think that would be okay. So let's do that. Just do a quick save. Transpose master and T-pose mesh. All right. Don't forget the humerus. Yes, the humors bone. That's not how you spell humerus. I was taking an anatomy class, gosh, like 2 years ago, and humerus, the word like, oh, that's humerus, and humerus, the bone, are not spelled the same way. But in the guy's art notes, in like the notes he was taking, he had spelled humorous as like the word funny, ha ha ha. He had named his subtool that way, and I thought he did it as a joke. I was like, oh hey, like that's funny, like good one. He's like, yes, I totally did that on purpose. And I was like, that actually is really funny. It was just like a little thing. But yes, the humerus bone, that's the funny one. Unbearable. My stream is lagging so often. Now it was even off for a few seconds. Yeah, it makes them broke mine in 5 places. You broke your in 5 places. Oh my gosh. What the heck happened? That's 5 places? That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot of damage, as some might say. What happened? How did you break your bone in 5 places? That's terrible, man. Hopefully, you said a few years ago, so I would think you're all good by now, but maybe not. Ice skating. Mom always said ice skating was the devil's work, so she didn't say that. That's not true. So I'm just trying to like rotate these legs out a bit, so they're not like they were sticking straight ahead. It looked pretty goofy. So I think just that little bit of rotation gives them a little bit more character. I think any more than that would probably start to look a bit weird. But yes, relatively simple shapes down here for the legs. And then it's just a matter of clicking T-pose and going back to where we were. Now do keep in mind that when you use like transpose master or you use subtool master, if you mirror something, any of those functions, it will create another tool in your list here. And if you're saving as a ZBrush project, this stuff starts to rack up really quick, and your ZBrush project file can become huge in just a matter of an hour. The rule of thumb is if you're just working with one tool, like I am here. I only have one tool for my character. And I could split some stuff out, like I could put his hammer in another tool or something like that, but in all honesty, there's no reason to do that when I can, I want to be able to visualize this all together. So, you know, I can come in here and click this R, refresh this list, but it's still in here. This, almost 4 million polygons are still in here. So the rule of thumb is come up here and just click Save As, Tool Save As. That's what you want to do 99% of the time. If you are going up here and clicking File, Save As, you are using ZBrush the wrong way. Unless you know better and you're doing it for a very particular reason, like you want to save your undo history, for example. Or if you have multiple tools you want to save. If you're just working with one tool, just save the tool. Your file size will be 1/10 the size as instead of if you are saving this way through the File Save As function. So just keep that in mind. It's a helpful tip that a lot of people starting out really don't know about, but it can be very, very helpful. Save some space on your computer. You're welcome. I know that stuff isn't cheap. It gets expensive, right? And you can only fit so many drives in your machine at the end of the day, and have so much space online and everything else. So, rule. You have some metal in your arm, so you're kind of like Iron Man. Don't go ice skating, you say. Just in general, don't go ice skating. I went ice skating for my first time on a date. Had to go to the hospital, broken wrist. Date was not amused. Yeah, well, the trick is you go ice skating with your date and you throw a triple sow cow. I think that's a ice skating thing. And you do that and you impress her very, very much, and then you're good. Her or him or them very, very much. And then you're all set to go. So, you know, it just depends on how good of an ice skater you are. And also where you live, I guess, maybe would be important to that, because if you're living in the south, somewhere warm, or the north, depending on what hemisphere you're in, I guess. If you're closer to the equator, probably less ice skating options around you than someone like myself. It was such a severe break that the next time could be the last. What? What does that even mean? Like they have to amputate it? Like, bone broke about 1/4 of the length and snapped in half. The 3/4 broke into 3 segments. Jeez, man, that's some. You were trying. You went for it, didn't you? You went for the triple sow cow, and. Hey, you know what? At least you tried, right? You tried doing that super cool ice skating move. Hopefully it wasn't something super lame, like you were holding onto the wall and they were like, no, just, it's safe out here, come on, the ice is great. It's great. And then immediately it just ate dirt. That would be, that would be awful. Also very amusing. Last time I went ice skating, I played a game where I tried to see what child I could find, what child or adult, to have the biggest wipeout possible. And I was like rating the wipeouts. And one dude was trying to leave the ice skating rink, and he was like flying across towards the exit, and his skates I don't know if they left the ice or if they like got caught or what, but he just like fell and like went flying forward off the ice onto the ground there. That was my favorite wipeout of the night. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Would wipe out again. It was great. It was good stuff. But yes, we are still cleaning. We're playing Made right now on our mesh. Clean up some stuff. I've been thinking about merging this lower jaw onto the upper portion of the head, and if I want to do that, and the answer is I'm scared to, because for the final pose I might want to change how this works. So I think what I'll do instead is merge them down, keep the subdivision levels and try to examine this a little bit better. So make sure you have double turned on. Double is down at the bottom of Tool, Display Properties, Double. Double lets you see backside facing polygons like this. I'm actually pretty happy with that mouth cavity size there. With the tongue, the teeth, and all sorts of other stuff, I think it's gonna be okay to merge this together. So I think I'll go ahead and do that. I just want to make sure that things are lined up maybe a little bit better. Because once you merge them down, there ain't no going back. Alright, so I'll just pull that in slightly. Just try to get a more clean transition here. Some serious lag there. Jeez. So my story of the crash was somewhere along the lines of what happened, you said. 5 nurses had to hold your arm to reset it. That's amazing. That sounds like a very fun time. Oh, man. So whenever you get on an airplane and you go through the metal detector, you have to be like, you have to tell them the whole story of how you broke your arm every time you do that. That's amazing. I hope that is the case. I know it's probably not, but I wish that it was. Okay. I'm not gonna merge it. I've decided it's not. There's no reason. It's not like worth saving space on geometry to merge it down quite yet, because I don't know. I threw in some teeth and a tongue for this, but I don't know if I'm gonna want to change the pose of the mouth. If I want to change it to such an extreme that he's like roaring and his mouth is open really wide, it would be really hard to do that if I merge this geo together. If I wanted to close his mouth, it would be really hard if I merge those together. So essentially, if I want to change it in any way, I want to have that option still, so I'm just not gonna merge it. All right, let's organize some more stuff. This is fun. Ooh. Feet, turn that off, turn that off. Upper jaw, lower jaw. I can merge these together, that's fine. Gums as well. Just make sure there's no. Can delete lower, I guess. So essentially what I have going on here is a tube for the gums, just a tube of curve snap tube or whatever, and then just the teeth kind of protruding from that. I can move those up and turn them off. Nose, pretty simple shape, just a triangle. Tongue shaped. These are part for the lower lid that I can merge into the head. I'm confident to do that, that's fine. Eyebrows I'll keep separate. Eyeballs will keep separate forever. Ears might not make an appearance in the final sculpt because we might not need them. So now we'll be able to turn on and off our armor a lot more easily, except for our eyes, which I have. Oh, there we go. So now we can turn our armor on and off with the click of a button here. So armor on, armor off. Isn't that nice? That's way nicer. The way I'm doing that is using auto collapse and creating some start groups with some pieces. So I'll show you how to do that. So I'll start with my head and I'll just click this arrow. So now it says start. It's now a start group for those things. And all that goes into there. That's fine. I'll create another start group for the body. So now I have, let's see, I'm just going to turn everything off. And essentially I have everything for the head, and everything for the body, and everything for the armor here. Awesome. So let's save that so we don't lose any progress on that if we were to crash, which, you know, happens quite often. But so with the eyes and the ears, it looks more like a goblin head. Yeah, I think just taking, it's always fun, I think, to come in here and play around, you know, just turn off the head. What could we build around this creepy boy? It's fun. It's a good time. So like I said, I would be fine merging down the lower lids into the head. It shouldn't be a problem. Merge those down. It'll keep the subdiv levels. I can actually merge that geometry if I want to, like Dynamesh it in. We'll wait to do that though, just because we have the lower jaws still connected. So we've successfully organized a lot of this. Not only that, we've combined a lot of it. So like this piece here, the arms, all this. What that's going to allow us to do now that it's organized a little bit better as well is I can Z-remesh and project details up through these pieces. So say I Z-remesh this at 2K, roughly 2K polys, it'll probably be closer to 4. I'll be able to remesh back up through here and then unhide everything again. Okay, once that's done, so what happened there was in ZRemesh I have keep groups turned on. That's why it took so long. I was wondering what was going on there. What keeps groups is going to do is it's going to try to keep these poly groups through to the finished product once it remeshes. And in this case, I don't think I want that. So I'm simply just going to remesh again and make sure that keep groups is turned off for ZRemesh. I was using it for something earlier and it just kind of carried through to this piece. So if you got some poly groups, more than one poly group on a ZRemesh piece, that's probably what caused it. It's, I think, the only thing that could cause it. So that should go a little bit faster, and then after that we can project up those details. The shape that we're going to get here isn't going to be quite as exact though, but it won't have, yeah, you can see here, the geometry doesn't flow quite in the way it was before, but that's totally okay because a lot of it's going to get smoothed out. So project all, and we'll do that a few times. And I can grab my pen at this point and just kind of get an idea of if I were to attempt to smooth this geo out at this level, what would I get? So I'm going to do another subdiv, and I'm going to delete this extra piece. So now you can see that it makes it so much easier for me to just kind of navigate my tool over here and be able to hide and unhide things quite a bit easier. So I can do like a little bit of smoothing out to some stuff here and playing around with that. I think just trying to get a bit of a smoother transition on some of these things and making other parts a little bit more clean would be a good idea. So we can do some playing around with that. Eventually, we'll try to merge most of this down, but that'll probably take place after posing. I find that it's easier to pose a character. It's easier to pose a character the less pieces you have. Absolutely, it makes it so much easier. But also having multiple pieces can, like if I wanted to make the character's arm go up in the air, so like he has a hammer, right? If he's swinging a big hammer, his arm is now completely, I think what would be pronated or just raised up in the air. Doing that pose with all of this being a single piece of geometry, I'm going to have to do a lot of work to kind of get that up there. Whereas in this case, it's separate, and I can kind of sculpt around that and make those changes quite a bit easier. So it's kind of trying to find that balance and knowing when to move forward with certain changes, but it just takes some time like everything else. So I like the shape that I get here with the neck. I think I would like to adjust it some though. Bring it in. I'm just using my move brush after I masked out some of that area and adjusting it to get a little bit of a cleaner curve in here. Play with that. And we'll do play around with that edge a little bit, trying to round that out. So we can smooth that out more down the road, but I'm happy with that for the time being. Next up, let's do these arms. We've made a lot of progress on this guy in the past few hours here, so I'm surprised. I'm glad. Normally we work quite a bit slower when we're streaming, but we're doing good. We're doing good. So ZBrush mesh, keep groups is off. That's great. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Let's do 1K. Try 1K for this. See what that gets us. And then we'll reproject those details, of course, and play around with some smoothing, especially that deltoid transition. It's a little bit sharp. This I like, but also a little bit sharp around here. We'll play with it. We'll see what we can get. One thing you want to do after doing that is run a close holes operation, just in case. If you got some holes and you start projecting up some details, you can get some really shit geometry. It's really annoying and really tough to work with. You'll pretty much just have to trash it and start over. Yeah, I think that's good. So get rid of that. And give me that bear head. Give me that bear body. Let's take a look at it. I don't want this to happen at all. Essentially, that was supposed to create a turn for the surface, which it did, and it has carried through, so that's good. Just a little too sharp. I kind of like the transition back here. Might want to lessen this, give a little bit more of a point there. I think that looks better. More traditional deltoid shape. Soften up some of this, but again, just being careful. Your smooth brush is super destructive, so if you're just be careful. In all honesty, it's very destructive. It will totally destroy your form if you're not careful. And just because it's called the smooth brush doesn't mean that it's the only brush that can do that, and doesn't mean that it's the best job. It's the best brush for the job that you need. So the trim dynamic brush, which I'm using right now, is often a lot better at smoothing out certain areas that you need it to. And I'm just using a couple other brushes like my pinch brush, and I'll use my clay tubes maybe occasionally in here just to adjust stuff and clean it up as I go. But yeah, now we're starting to get a bit more of a cleaner transition with a lot of this. Starting to make it look a lot better. I think I need to exaggerated this quite a bit too much, which isn't. Exaggeration is good, but I typically like to push things farther than I think they should go a lot of the time, and then later on or right away I'll move it back. So like you're here on the line and you want to be here, so I'll go from here to here and then kind of try to meet back in the middle, just because I want to see how far I can push it before I break the shape or the form or whatever I'm working on, and then kind of play with it from there. So again, all stuff that comes with practice. I don't really like the transition here. Kind of want to blend that a little bit better. So still get that lateral head of the deltoid there, or I'm sorry, of the tricep. Try to just clean, and make changes where necessary. So this should be straight line like that. Could just like clip it, but again, doing things the manual way can help out a lot. Just give you control. Whew, all right. Let's blend. Let me see here. Yeah, I think I want to blend this shape a little bit better, as this muscle, which I don't know the name of off the top of my head. I believe there's two heads to it, but they do attach a little bit higher than what I have, and they do blend a little bit better. But again, this is like stylized anatomy, so take it with a grain of salt. He's a bear. He's an anthropomorphic bear, so I don't... Cool. Deltoid transition's still a little bit strong. Could maybe play around with that a little bit. And just want to be careful that I don't go too far here. Trying to look at stuff from every angle. It's 3D after all, right? Gary, later, man. Thanks for stopping in. We'll see you in the next stream, for sure. How do you get such flat geometry in places? What geometry, or what brush do you use? Sorry. Let's say back here. Are you talking? Maybe I'm not sure what you mean by flat geometry. Are you talking about like this specific region, or are you talking about like this, like just in general, my geometry is very flat, very clean. For this, I was using one of the trim brushes just to like lightly stroke and help flatten this out. This in particular is the Trim Dynamic brush. There's also H Polish, which is really good for creating flat pieces, if that's what you want. But if you're talking about the overall cleanliness of my model, then no, that is not a particular brush. That is all me. That's me. I did that with a combination of many brushes. It's just, it takes a long time to learn how to create clean forms like this. Not just in ZBrush, but just like in sculpting in general. So that's just like sculptural ability. Yeah, but again, I don't know what you're referencing in particular. Yeah, you said yeah, but I don't know what you said yeah to. Well, hopefully that yeah is yes, I answered your question. So we'll take that as a good thing. Pinch brush here with Alt, just to get a little bit of a cleaner line. You know, I spent some time softening that transition. Now you might think I'm hardening it up, but I'm just trying to make it a little bit more clean. Trying to get like a thumbnail read on this. One thing I can do here is I can try to pinch this. I have it very wide. Again, stylized anatomy, so take it with a grain of salt about like what changes I'm making versus what changes you could be making to a character you're working on. But at the same time, I'm just trying to like, I don't like the shadow that I get there, so let's find a way to get rid of it. I'm going to use pinch again, really harden up that elbow. Just soften. Soften, soften, soften. Clean up this transition a little bit. That's not what we want there. Let's just completely destroy this form. Just give me a smooth transition. Awesome. Well, we severely lessened that shadow, made it look more akin to a bone protruding outside of the skin there, your elbow. So I think that's a lot closer to what we want. I think maybe just a little bit more blending, and I think I'll be happy. Happy enough to move on to the next thing, right? How are we doing on time, actually, real quick here? Okay. All right, well, we've got a lot done. So I'm happy with our progress today. What do you guys think? How's our samurai bear looking? Let's turn on our armor. We can keep playing around with some armor stuff, but probably work on doing the same process that I did here to these pieces, so that'll be a little bit repetitive, as well as getting a little bit more visual interest on here. I would like to stream tomorrow if you guys are around, probably roughly the same time. So let me know if you guys are kicking, or if that sounds good with you guys in terms of time. That's when I'm going to be available tomorrow, hopefully. But I think that's where we'll cut it for now. There's still a lot of stuff that we need to clean up, just referencing the body here. But yes, we've made a ton of good progress, I think. So I'm very happy with where we've come so far in the past few hours. So thanks guys for coming. I think I'm gonna cut it here, bounce on out. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow if I get around to streaming. Again, it'll be around the same time. So I guess with that, I'll head on out of here. Thanks again for joining us, asking questions. Hopefully I was able to help you out. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. See ya.